Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of my trip down memory lane back to the Pacific Crest Trail and my Thru-hike exactly 10 years ago. In this episode we are finally heading into the high Sierras after having trekked over 1,000 kilometers through the desert. In the last episode we walked as far as Kennedy Meadows, which is at the foot of the high Sierras and is considered the gateway to the Sierras and the end of the desert section. And in this episode we're now going to enter the high mountains. We will also reach the highest point of our journey in this episode, namely the summit of Mount Whitney, which we can already see here. An insanely tall mountain, the highest mountain in the US outside of Alaska at almost 4,500 meters, and yes, it has an incredible view. But to get there, we still have a bit of climbing to do, so let's start right away. This is just after Kennedy Meadows. I think I'm even still in Kennedy Meadows here, having another cameling up. But drinking, that's the first thing that wouldn't really concern us in the next few weeks as it did when we were in the desert, because water would soon be omnipresent for us, which of course we were really looking forward to. Here, the sign, the South Sierra Wilderness, it really marks the beginning of the Sierras, and when we passed it, it was a really great feeling that we knew, okay, now we are really going there. Now we're going into the Sierras. Now everything is changing. We're leaving the desert and going into the high mountains. Forests, lakes, rivers, all of that is coming our way, and we were really looking forward to it. And then to actually see it on the sign, it was really great. To get there doesn't take long. It's comparable to the San Jacinto area where we were, 4 or 5 episodes ago at the very beginning of our trip. So the terrain changes quickly, very quickly, but there was still a bit of desert, but pretty soon we got here after just a few miles by, at a really beautiful river with great meadows. And that was a sight that we hadn't seen for ages. Probably not since we started. Such a great green landscape, and I enjoyed it for a while resting. Here in the picture you can see my bear canister, which we have to carry from now on. All the food is stuffed into it. It's not exactly practical, it's quite heavy, and of course you can't fit it into your rucksack in a flexible way like a food bag, but it's compulsory to carry one, so of course we did that. But it was still kind of fun to be able to see your food from the side as it got smaller and to have everything a bit more organized in there. And what's also great is that you can sit on it really well, so from now on you always had a little chair with you. Well, anyway, here at the stream under this bridge we took a long break together with lots of other hikers. And there were these swallows everywhere, which I thought was really nice. I love birds, and these were pretty much the first birds apart from hummingbirds that I saw on the trail. Understandably, there are very few birds in the desert. I'm sure I saw a bird in the San Jacinto region or something, but I don't remember it as vividly as these swallows because there were so many of them. And in the desert section, birds were usually alone and sparse. Well, that marked another point for me on the way to a completely different terrain. After we took a long break there, we carried on walking and then steadily gained altitude, which was really, really exhausting. The backpack was very heavy, so we had to take a bit of water with us for the first stage because the foothills of the Sierras don't carry as much water as the high mountains do. And above all, this bear canister, I think it weighed like 3 pounds or so when empty, and then of course it was packed full of food because we had a relatively long stretch ahead of us to Independence. And yeah, it was just very heavy, and then of course we kept going up, so at some point we were over 3,000 meters high again, and I wasn't perfectly acclimatized yet, and you could tell that this extra weight was really putting a strain on me. But well, it's all part of it, and of course I was rewarded with these wonderful views, and it's just wonderful when you get to see something completely different again after 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks in the desert, even though I did love the desert very much. Yes, this is a really interesting plant. Unfortunately, I've forgotten the name. I have to research it again. I posted here. I definitely thought it was really cool. I'd never seen it before. I thought it was a mushroom at first, but someone later told me it was a plant. And yeah, I thought it was cool. It just looks bizarre and so unnatural. It's like made of plastic or something. But yeah, there were a few of them growing there, and I found that very exciting. And yeah, here we can also see already the high mountains in the background. I don't know if one of them is Mount Whitney. It could be, probably. But it was great to see that we were really on the way to these high mountains and that we were really getting close. Yeah, this was a funny story. We were getting some water at the stream, and our friend left his snack bag on his backpack. So, um, it looks like this is a picture taken in a tent, but it's actually outside. And when we came back, there was a chipmunk that had bitten open the bag and was taking off with a red M&M. So there were natural nuts and raisins and stuff in there too, which you'd think a chipmunk would be more likely to eat, but it knew exactly what was the good stuff in that bag, and yeah, it cheekily snacked on a chocolate lens, and that well, that was our first experience of many with rodents in the Sierras and in the regions to come, and that was a little warning that you really have to be careful. Bears aren't necessarily the ones who want your food. They are mainly rodents who do. And yeah. Then we passed this great rock formation, which reminded me a bit of Elbsandsteingebirge, which is a mountain range in Germany. I thought it was really cool. I like that kind of thing, and I remember that some Air Force training maneuvers were actually taking place there. And I was standing there and looking at the rock formation, and suddenly a jet flew over my head really close over the ridge of the mountain, and made a spin, and it was really loud, and you could see the plane and everything. I thought it was really cool, of course, somehow also frightening, but it was really impressive how he raced over the hilltop and then turned a screw with his plane. It was quite a sight. So you don't see that every day, just like these amazing rock formations, of course. And yeah. The chipmunks became our constant companions. Here's one that we watched for a very long time. We took a break there, and of course it kept venturing towards us. Of course it wanted our food. And they are quite curious, not so shy. Well, shy, but they also know that they are really fast. It seems, um, yeah. It looks like he found something to eat here. Yeah. They know how fast they are, and then they come closer and closer. And if you make any effort to move a little, they dart back again. And it was kind of cute to watch. But at some point, we developed a love-hate relationship with them. At least I did, because they were really, really pushy. And I don't know if it was them or mice or what. They also broke in our tent and nibbled in the food bags and so on. So at some point, that wasn't funny anymore. But of course, they still were cute. And yeah. So we continued step by step towards Mount Whitney, and as you can see, the landscape has really changed a lot. Even here in the valleys, it's green and there's no desert at all. And that was the point where we realized, okay, we're really out of the desert now. We've been walking for a day and a half since Kennedy Meadows, I think, and now the desert is really over and we've arrived in the high Sierras. We've also seen more and more snow on the slightly higher mountains. Normally, large parts of the Sierras are covered in snow. As you walk through them, we caught a year where there was a very low snowpack. This is, of course, great for hiking, but for the water supply in the state of California, it's quite a disaster. But of course, yeah, we didn't know any different, so we used this to our advantage so that we could walk through the Sierras relatively quickly. Most hikers slow down in other years, so the daily mileage of most hikers is reduced in the Sierras, and that wasn't the case for us. We were able to walk just as much in the desert as we were doing in the Sierras, and that was, of course, very practical for us. Yeah, we then came to Sequoia Kings National Park. Here we saw a really fat rabbit. It was really, really fat. I don't think you can really see how big this animal was, but it really was a gigantic rabbit. I don't think I've ever seen a rabbit that big before or after. So that was a huge animal. But anyway, this national park is quite famous. Part of the John Muir Trail also goes through and across Yosemite National Park, I think, where we would come later. But I was very happy to reach this one because I'm a fan of a audio play series in Germany. It's I don't even know if you guys know what audio plays are, but it's basically movies without images. So you just listen to it. And this is very huge in Germany. And there's this one series which takes place in the US because the main characters are some boys who live in California. And in one episode, they are in this national park. And of course, it was cool to walk through there as a fan, to be at the location where the heroes of your childhood were also out and about. That was the first marmot I'd ever seen. Or maybe it was not the first one, but it definitely was one of the firsts. And at first I couldn't tell what kind of animal it was because marmots in the Alps in Europe look very different. I had only seen it from behind with that bushy tail, and I don't think that they have such a distinctive tail in the Alps. They do have a tail, of course, but it's not that prominent. And also the color of the fur is different. And in any case, at first I thought it was a predator, like a wolverine or whatever. But then I saw more and more of them, and I was like, okay, those are marmots. And yeah, they would eventually become our daily companions, which is really quite cute. And they are not as pushy and annoying as the chipmunks. So yeah. Yes, and finally water. Finally having water was wonderful. Of course, it also meant constantly having to cross rivers. That was a new challenge. But it wasn't anything I hadn't done before in Norway or something. But of course, it always interrupts the flow of the hike when you have to take your shoes off or balance over some rocks or something. And that was always a bit of an interruption. But it was super relaxing to always have drinking water available and not have to worry about it. Of course, we still looked at the map to see where the springs and creeks were. But it wasn't really an issue that we had to carry several liters with us. Most of the time, 1 or 2 liters were enough. And that was a very pleasant change from what we had to manage logistically before in the desert. Yeah, here's a small compilation of marmot shots. Just enjoy it. Yes, that marmot that pooped all over its rocks was at Mount Whitney Base Camp, where we pitched our tents. It was about 20 or 30 meters away from us and didn't let us bother too much. I thought that was very, very nice somehow, that we were so accepted by nature. Well, as I said, this marmot was already at Mount Whitney Base Camp. Here are a few photos just before that with a view of Whitney and this great mountain panorama. It's just amazing what you could see there. I remember standing there and thinking, wow, that's amazing. Those are dimensions that you can't imagine from a photo like that. What huge mountains you're looking at. Really, really crazy. You then have a feeling you just realize how small you are, how small and insignificant actually, compared to these gigantic mountains who have been there for thousands, millions of years maybe, to this incredible wilderness in which you are traveling. It was really great. And yeah, here we have another cheeky chipmunk. And yes, I have to say that I didn't see a single bear in the entire time I was carrying a bear canister, but I did see a lot of chipmunks, and we've already had holes in the tent from some rodents at this point that got in here at night. And the bear canisters, well, I have to say it was really nice that we no longer had to worry about the rodents getting into our food. But it was quite funny. These bear canisters apparently are not odor-proof. the rodents found them anyway, and of course they spent the whole time running around them wanting to get in. It was always quite nice to watch, especially when you were lying in a tent watching the show. That was quite funny. Yeah, but of course, I mean, you cannot be 100% mad about them, even if it was really annoying and it became a real nuisance later on in Washington, especially with the mice. They're just too cute, and yeah. Well, now, let's just sit back and take a look at the Whitney climb, the way up this great mountain.
Wir befinden uns gerade im Anstieg auf...
We're on the climb up Mount Whitney.
Das ist dieses Biest dort.
It's this beast here.
Der höchste Berg.
The highest mountain of the lower 48.
Wir sind um 5 Uhr auf.
We set off at 5 a.m.
Andy wollte noch früher...
Annie wanted to leave even earlier, but his alarm didn't go off.
Sein Wecker hat nicht geklingelt. Jetzt ist er...
Now he's a good way ahead of me. Michael is a bit behind me.
Es ist jetzt schon anstrengend.
It's already exhausting now, but it doesn't really start until we're back there.
Denn da werden wir...
Because we're actually going to climb up this steep face.
Man sieht das auch.
You can see that too. There are curves. Well, you can probably see it on the camera, but it certainly looks strenuous.
Hier kommt jetzt gleich Guitar Lake.
We are about to reach Guitar Lake, the last water source, but we've already refueled at the river.
Ja, und da oben soll es heute hingehen.
That's where we're heading today. I'm already relatively high up and it's going surprisingly well.
Gestern war ich echt kaputt.
Yesterday I was really exhausted and now we're much higher and it's going really well.
Wirklich gut. Die Sonne ist eben aufgegangen, tolle
The sun has just risen, great colors here now.
Da unten
there are other climbers down there, you probably can't see them.
Tja, und hier geht's jetzt noch
well,
weiter hoch.
And now we're going even higher up here. A lot of snow fell here yesterday.
Bei uns hat das nur als Regen.
At home it only hit the camp as rain, but here it's snow.
Aber hier liegt das als Schnee. Ich bin jetzt fast oben.
I'm almost at the top now. I estimate another good mile to the summit.
Das meiste an Höhenmetern habe ich hinter mir.
I've covered most of the elevation gain. Now it's starting to get warm. The sun is now over the summit here and
den Gipfel hier rüber. Und Sonnenbrille auf. Schnee
I
blendet.
have my sunglasses on. The snow is blinding and
Und jetzt sind wir hier auf dem Gipfel.
now we're
gerade.
here on the summit ridge and up there is the summit. So, 4:30 to 7, 2.5 hours.
Oben.
at the top. Yes, and it really was an amazing feeling to be up there. I would never have thought it possible the night before that I could do it. The thing was, we got there and I was exhausted. I was even more exhausted than on the San Jacinto climb. I was really so physically exhausted. It must have had something to do with the altitude, that when I walked back from the stream to the tent, it was like 200 yards or so. I was so out of breath that I couldn't do anything at all. I could just lie there and do nothing. So I was really completely exhausted. And of course, that was a real mood killer because I really wanted to go up Whitney, and I was laying there thinking it was never going to work. And the next morning I woke up and realized, okay, I'm definitely feeling better and I can definitely try to climb Whitney. And then I was up there in 2.5 hours and it was so incredibly easy. So spending a night at altitude to acclimatize is really so effective. It actually works. I mean, you know from theory that this is how it's done, but then to experience for yourself how effective it really is, that was totally fascinating. The evening before, 150 meters straight hiking, completely dead, and then the next morning, I don't remember how many meters it was, like 1200 meters of ascent or something like that, up to the super high mountain, higher than I'd ever been in my life. It was simply amazing. And yeah, we then took a very long break up on the summit, I think 2 hours or even longer, sitting on the summit, enjoying the views, and gradually more and more people joined us. When I got to the top, I think there were only 3 of us. Another hiker was already coming back down when I went up. He had somehow spent the night up there, but he was so badly equipped. He had only normal cotton sweater and a bad sleeping bag, and he was so cold that he had to go down. And yeah, apart from that, there were 3 of us up there, and it was nice to be able to enjoy the summit relatively alone before all the crowds arrived, especially the day hikers who come up there. You can also hike up there from the other side, and they all came, and then at some point I had to go back down because it was just too crowded. But it was really great up there, and especially that we could still see it in the snow, a bit of snow. We were sitting down at the camp the night before, and it was raining cats and dogs and thunderstorms, and we were already thinking, oh no, hopefully we'll be able to go up there tomorrow, because you cannot go up there in the thunderstorms or rain. It's far too dangerous. Well, but then it was just the perfect day. We went down. It was a bit stressful because the snow thawed, but then froze again straight away, and it was very slippery, which wasn't so nice. And you also had to keep moving around people all the time who were coming up, but it was just a very successful day for climbing Whitney. Yeah, and here are a few more views from the top. Here you can see from the shape why it is called Guitar Lake. It looks a bit like a guitar. You can also see it again up here. Yeah, simply an amazing sight. I also know this from Thru-hiking in Norway, my favorite mountain on earth so far. When you're on the highest mountain in the region and everything else around you is lower, it's such an amazing feeling to have a 360-degree panoramic view without anything at eye level to obstruct your view. It really is a totally crazy feeling. And when you realize that you made it up there under your own with your own abilities, with your own motivation and muscle power, then you can be really proud of yourself, I'd say. And I took so many photos on a descent because there was always a view back to Whitney, and it really is a magnificent mountain when you look at it with the snow on top and everything. And it looked really great, and I really enjoyed the descent. I was all alone there and was able to reflect a little on the ascent, what I had achieved and what I had experienced and seen. And yes, I really enjoyed that. Now I'm walking through this beautiful landscape again. It's hard to believe I was just there. But it was quite good. However, I came across a few people who had to be let through. That was a bit stupid. The ridge was really, really narrow, but yeah.
Jetzt geht's erstmal wieder zurück zum Camp.
Now we are heading back to camp. And maybe we'll do a few more miles today. Let's see.
Es ist jetzt 12:30 rum.
It's now 12:30. Still plenty of time today.
Ja, es war ein sehr toller Tag.
Yeah, it was a really great day. My first 4,000 meter peak.
Anstrengend,
Tiring,
aber
but it was definitely a great
es war auf jeden
experience.
Fall eine tolle Erfahrung. Und ja, vielleicht esse ich erstmal
And
schön
yes,
was.
I'm about to have a nice meal. And wow, look at that. It's so nice. Water at
Ist das
last.
schön, endlich Wasser.
Yeah, we definitely didn't walk any further that day. We had planned to walk a few more miles, and when we were back down at the tent, super early, like 2 p.m. or something, or even earlier, I can't remember exactly, we just sat there and we just enjoyed dawdling around a bit and just doing nothing, just relaxing. Or, I mean, we'd already done an incredible amount of hiking that day, both in terms of miles and altitude, and then we just said, oh, come on, let's enjoy the day here. Let's give us a break, sit around the tent and have nice conversations. And yeah, that was actually the first time a ranger checked my permit, I remember. It was checked before at Mom's apple pie store, but this was the first time actually I had to show it to a ranger to show that I'm actually allowed to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. Yeah, here's another small compilation of my favorite new animal. Just take a look and enjoy. This particular moment was really very trusting, very curious. It was at the foot of Forester Pass where we took a longer break before hiking up there. The Whitney isn't actually on the trail, it's a side trip, but the highest part of the PCT, of the actual PCT, is Forester Pass, which appears here in the video. Forester Pass is over 4,000 meters high, and this is the highest point of the PCT. It's this little crevasse here where I've just filmed past. I didn't know exactly which part it was when I filmed it, but it's here. This is Forester Pass, this little thing here. And yeah, this is the most notorious part of the PCT and supposedly the most dangerous. And it was snow-free for us that year, which meant we were up there in no time at all. So it was no problem at all. It took us 15 minutes from where we had our lunch break, and then we were already up at the top. It was all a bit unspectacular. We had imagined it to be completely different. But of course, we were happy to accept that this supposedly very difficult part of the trail was so easy to master. Then we simply enjoyed the amazing view from up there. Even if you've just been on Whitney, the view from Forester Pass is almost as spectacular, and that actually applies to all the views you had in the High Sierras and in Washington. Then, of course, we took the obligatory summit photo on the pass, so to speak, and then we went straight back down the other side. And And this year is a pika, which I'd never seen before. They make a really high-pitched whistling noise, and we've seen this animal a few times. It's supposedly threatened with extinction. What a shame, because it's very cute, and here again, simply amazing views. It was such a gift to hike there and see these amazing views. Really, you can just stand there and marvel at where you are. It's an absolutely amazing feeling. Most of the time, however, we were walking in an area like this, I'd say half rock, half meadow, which is quite pleasant to walk on and above all pleasant for camping. We had tents, some of which had to be packed down, so you could have set them up more or less freestanding, but that's not ideal, and we always tried to camp on grass, which worked surprisingly well in the Sierras, although there are also these rocky passes. But we always camped between the passes in the valleys, usually near a lake or something, and that was really nice. You could keep your feet in the water and go for a swim, and above all, of course, you had water at your disposal, which is very pleasant when you have water while camping and don't have to think about how much water I need to prepare my dinner, breakfast, and so on. We saw more and more wild animals, a lot of them deer. I don't know exactly what kind of deer they are, whitetail deer or what. It was definitely super beautiful, but and here we are actually on a side trail into the Onion Valley. This was actually my favorite part of the entire trail, even though it's not on the trail. But this way down into the Onion Valley over the Kearsarge Pass was simply so beautiful. These crystal clear blue lakes and this dreamy ancient landscape were really beautiful. And we walked this side trail to hitch from the Onion Valley parking lot down to Independence, where we had a resupply package.
Das ist der Bullfrog Lake.
This is Bullfrog Lake, which is off-trail.
Off-trail. Wir sind jetzt gerade auf dem Weg.
We are now on our way to Onion Valley, from where we will walk or hopefully drive to Independence.
Oder hoffentlich fahren. Diese Section ist wirklich bisher.
This section is really the most beautiful so far. The desert was great, but this is really so idyllic and really wild. It's beautiful.
Und richtig wild. Wunderschön.
Yes, I can say that this was the most beautiful section so far, and as I said, I found this part of the Onion Valley the most beautiful part of the whole trip. I often said before that I like the desert better than the Sierras, but I remember this section in particular as being breathtakingly beautiful. All in all, it was a really beautiful section, and of course it was also particularly positive in my opinion, because we were suddenly in completely different terrain and could experience so many new things. And yeah, this whole section was, here we see the Kearsarge Pass, and the view down into the Onion Valley is simply breathtakingly beautiful. And I loved hiking there, and about here should be the parking lot where we were heading from, where we wanted to hitch down to Independence. That didn't quite work out because there was no one there at all. But luckily a few other hikers wanted to go to Bishop, which is a larger town nearby, and they organized a shuttle that kindly took us down to Independence. Here we see the parking lot, and here we see a sub that I treated myself to in Independence. Yeah, that's how the first stage of the Sierra ends. Packed with emotions, packed with impressions, lots of experiences, lots of new things. It was like a completely new trail experience. And yeah, that was a really quick and short summary, even though we're already so far in the video. But I've experienced so much that I could talk about it for, 5 hours or longer. That's why I've shortened it a bit. If you're still with me, great. And if you ever hiked a PCT yourself, then you'll probably like this section just as much as I did after completing the desert. And if you've already hiked it, why don't you let me know how you experienced this section? Do you think it was as breathtaking for you as it was for me? And in the next episode, we continue in the Sierras to Red's Meadow. And as always, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I see you in the next video. See you then. Ciao.